Okay, welcome to the presentation Collaboration for Success and Administering NPD Grants. This will be a panel discussion with audience participation. My name is Martin Roth, and I'm an education program specialist in OELA, which you met me earlier, obviously. And I'm going to be the panel monitor for this presentation this afternoon. I serve as the program officer for Ohio State University Grant Educators and Families for English Learners. It's a 2017 NPD grant. In addition, OSU has a 2021 NPD grant called Project Helpers with OELA. It is my pleasure to introduce the grant team from The Ohio State University. To my left is Belinda Gilbert.
So we're each going to introduce ourselves really briefly. So I am the project director for both of the grants that Martin mentioned. I'm also an associate professor in educational administration at The Ohio State University. And I learned that very early on when I came from Australia. That three-letter word is very important. So prior to OSU, I was an administrator with Newport News Public Schools in Virginia. Is anybody here from Virginia? Welcome, welcome. And my responsibilities there were around recruiting a diversified educator workforce and also working to retain them. And prior to that, I'm obviously an Aussie, and I was an educator for 20 years in rural New South Wales. So I'm going to turn to my colleague, Becky Parker.
Good afternoon. My name is Becky Parker, and I've been at The Ohio State University for going on 26 years. I can't believe it's been that long. And I've done a variety of things working with our National Center for Career and Technical Education until we lost our funding, and thought I was going back to the classroom, and met Belinda and have been there ever since, working on transition to teaching grants, as well as now we're working with the OELA grants. And prior to coming to the university, I was a classroom teacher. I taught early childhood education in a career center just west of Columbus. And I taught high school 11th and 12th graders how to teach 3- and 4-year-olds, and we ran our own preschool in the high school 4 days a week. So come with a lot of diverse background, but I've, unlike Belinda, been in Ohio all my life. And now I will turn it over to Melissa Vesey.
And I'm Melissa Vesey of Melissa Vesey Coaching and Evaluation. I've been in evaluation for over 15 years, and have evaluated dozens of federally funded projects in education and youth policy, and have been partnered with Belinda and Becky on a variety of projects since 2007. And so currently on the evaluation team, which is also a partnership for the 2 OELA grants that Becky and Belinda head.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rael Moore, and I am Executive Director of Evaluation Data Solutions. And I work with Melissa Vesey as the independent evaluator, and I'm also an alum of The Ohio State University.
I'm from the Johns Hopkins.
So we'll turn it back to you, Rael.
Yep. So one of the things that we wanted to do is sort of model this idea of collaboration, since this is what the topic of the presentation is. And so one of the things that we'd like you to do is be interactive with the session. So one of those interactive components is to work on the live polling. How many people have the app on their phone? Great. So if you want to go to the Crowd Compass mobile app on your phone, and then go to the agenda, and then go to this session, 1 o'clock on Tuesday. And there should be 4 links that, because there will be 4 polling questions. So if you just want to click on the very first polling question, and it asks you, including this year, how many years have you worked on an NPD grant? And I'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we'll show you the responses. Hey, Tim, do you want to show the results?
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Well, that's awesome because we got plenty that have 5 years or more to help model and mentor those that are your first year. That's terrific. Please be sure to take advantage of those that are in their first year, that you talk with those in that have been doing this for 5 years. Oh, it's me. So just before Martin asked the first question, we thought we should give a little bit of information about our 2 grants that we have been awarded with OELA. So the first one, as Martin said, is called Educators and Families for English Learners. It was a 2017 grantee. We have been providing pre-service and in-service teachers with professional learning to improve the instruction for our English learners, or as we often refer to them as our multilingual learners. And we just want to explain that our pre-service teachers are individuals who at Harris County Department of Education have come through a non-traditional pathway to seeking certification as a classroom teacher. So they spend their first year as what HCDE referred to as intern, and then they are hired as a teacher of record with local school districts that we partner with. Part of that grant, we've been also working on a What Works Clearinghouse instructional practice for English learners, and it's called PALS, the Peer Assisted Learning. And in this first grant, our families are Bantu from Somalia, who are living in Columbus, Ohio, and they speak Mai, which is only a spoken language, not written, and also Latino families. So that's the first grant. And in the second grant, the one that we received in September 2021, it's called Helpers. Our partners in our first grant are also partners in our second grant with new partners and new activities. And we purposely set that up in our RFP so that we had experienced partners that we have developed relationships who could model that collaboration with our new partners. We have expanded our K-5, our elementary student population, to include middle school. And I'm really pleased after seeing the IES presentation this morning that there is a gap in supporting research and activities around middle schoolers and their families. We're also planning a one-to-one tutoring for families to be able to support at home. So collectively, we are friends who care. We are instructors who guide. We're mentors who model. We are leaders who learn and inspire. And we, like all of you, are advocates for multilingual learners and their families. So I will now ask Tim if you could get ready, because we heard this morning that Roberto Rodriguez referred to our ever-increasing need for a diverse educator pool, and in particular with a focus on
as I reflect on the past
teachers' skills and knowledge. And so our first video clip is from Principal Teresa Araba at Eakin Elementary School in Columbus, Ohio, and she is going to reference the importance of our pre-service preparation because they become her staff, her in-service classroom teachers. So thanks, Tim. Video clip number 1.
As I reflect on the past 5 years, one thing I've learned is the need to be methodical in the development of pre-service teachers. The first year, we worked hard to move through and digest 21 hours of material to support our teachers as they developed a common knowledge of best practices in an accelerated plan. Progressing forward, we have slowed down the work to ensure that the development of pre-service teachers is organic and really taking the time to set the stage for teachers to not only consume new understandings, but to digest and apply the best practices which enhance the development of each student.
And our second video clip here relates to the HCDE, our pre-service intern teachers. So 4 of them are going to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Jeanette.
Go for it, Tim.
Hi, my name is Janelle. I'm a first-year teacher at Spring ISD. I teach first grade at Clark Primary. It's an at-sea school, meaning we go longer. And our school is from pre-K to first, so it's not that big. I love my team, my coaches, my mentor, my principal. They're all amazing. It is a Title I school, and how I prepare for my lessons is that it's scripted. Everything's scripted with Amplify and Eureka Math, what we're doing. And I always do PLC with my team every Friday or whenever because we're so close. I always get input. We have two people that are new on our first grade hall. Well, it's 4 first grade teachers. So 2 of them are new, one is me, and the other 2 have like 20 years of experience. So we always go to them and ask for help, and they're so kind.
So my name is Roberto Aces Limongi. I'm originally from Venezuela. Moved to the United States to Houston in 2015. I'm a second-year teacher for Dallas ISD. I teach 3rd grade. I'm a self-contained teacher, so I teach reading, math, social studies, and science for bilingual teachers.
Okay, hello everyone. I am Ijoma Benaso. I am the assistant principal at Energize for STEM Academy. It's a middle school, 6, 7, and 8. I'm originally from Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I came to America in 2009 to do my master's in social work because it was related to what I was already doing back at home, thinking that I was going to go home. But as life would have it, I moved to Houston because of family, and I was also working remotely doing technical writing. And I decided to change my career because I wanted to be close to reaching out to children and, helping children the best way I can, because it's also part of what I was doing back at home. And I got to Houston, and I joined the school, this same school, back in 2017-18 school year. And I started as a substitute teacher. And I joined the program, and I became the assistant principal 2 years ago.
My name is Xin Zhao. I just noticed I came from the same school with her. So I'm a teacher. I'm a kindergarten teacher in Energize for Excellence Academy. She's in middle school. I'm in elementary school. I come from China in 2018. Yes. This is my 4th year to be a teacher here in America.
As I reflect on the past 5 years,
Turn it back to you, Ray.
All right, everyone. The focus of this session is a moderator panelist. And one of the things that we're also going to ask you to do is participate in a Jamboard. How many people are familiar with Jamboards by raise of hand? Awesome. So here are a set of instructions in terms of how to get to that Jamboard. So you can get to it in 2 different ways. One is through the app. So if you go to the exact same location as the polling, there should be a blue link that says Jamboard. Or you can go at the very bottom, there is a tiny URL. You could go there as well. So as the moderator continues to ask questions, we're going to ask you to also pose any questions that you might have, and I will interject with the panel as they discuss, or if you have any questions. So any statements or questions, feel free to post them on the Jamboard.
Okay, the first question. Looking back on the NPD grant work you've done, what is one thing you've learned that you wish you would have known and implemented in the first year of the grant?
I'm going to tackle this question. And I'm also going to preface by saying I'm going to give you five suggestions that we tried during our first year and what we have learned from those 5 activities. So the very first thing is, you've got to come down a little memory lane walk with me. All right. Remember the logic model that you submitted in as part of your narrative, right? Remember that logic model? You can kind of visualize it. Ours was like a 1-pager, and we had the goals, the activities, and the outcomes. And we developed our logic model based on the GAPRA measures from the National Professional Development Program. Right? So this is our big picture. When we were funded, we went back to our logic model and we looked at this as the big picture. And it's a constant reminder for us of what we're striving for. And the 3 things that we constantly remind ourselves are: 1 is we're advancing our language learners' academic success. We are pooling our expertise and resources to do that. And we are documenting and reporting with evidence our collective success. So my first suggestion is keep this. Now, when I was a kid in Australia, anything that was really important, my mother put on the back of the toilet door, because in Australia, toilets are all separate, okay? So in my household right now, we have a separate, and guess where this is pasted. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, remember your management plan that you also put in your RFP, okay? You submitted it. Ours is about 3 pages long, but it's still only really words on a page. So what we did during our first year was we put together a small team, of which Becky helps co-lead with me, and it's called a strategic planning team. And it is made up of the site leads from each of our partners. And what we did in our first year was we took these 2 documents, our logic plan and our management plan, and we overlaid the logic plan onto our management plan. And we came up with a document that was actionable, that was simple, that was direct, that allowed us to move away just from words, but put into on action tasks and activities. So that really is was my first suggestion. I also want to say that during that time, during our first year of first year of planning, and then as we moved to our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year of implementation, there were always kinks in our think or hiccups in the giddy up, right? There were always times that we had this roadmap now, but we ended up having to get off the road at various points, right? I'm sure all of you have experienced this. You're driving down some freeway in the US and you've gone from blue and you see on your Google Maps, now you've got orange, and then the dreaded red appears, right? And any kind of, if you're like me, any kind of self-regulation you may have had goes out the window, because now you're trying to figure out, what am I going to deal with this stop traffic? And what we learned in our first year planning and then built it into implementation is it's okay to get off that roadmap. If you have to take a side road, you have to go off track for a little bit to keep things moving forward. You have to go at a slightly slower pace. Don't let that phase you. You will find an on-ramp and you'll get back onto that roadmap collectively, and you'll keep going forward, even if you're going forward a little bit slower at the time. And I'll give you a couple of specific examples. All of a sudden in our 2nd year, we had an instructional coach who the district moved from the building we were working with to another school. So we had to then get together and figure out, what do we do now that we have had that instructional coach move? We had a subject matter expert who had been an English language learner in the district, who had worked with pre-service teachers at Ohio State, and she unexpectedly passed away last October. And so our reliance on her, we had to put our heads together and say, what can we do now to continue the very good work that Kadia had started with us and expand that with the skills of another individual? So those were the kinds of, another quick one was we had a large influx of immigrant children at Eakin Elementary School just this year. And the principal was trying to get all the OELPA testing done, as well as figure out where each child was and get them into the developmentally appropriate context in order to support their first task, which was around the academic language acquisition. All right, I'm going to go quickly to number 2. Number 2 means you have to get to know the context. So C for context. Your partners, your sites are literally, we are here collectively together. And so the context drives all what we call the C words. So children, care, compassion, curriculum, community, cooperation, coordination, and collaboration. So ask yourself and your team, what do we know about all those C words in that first year? That's something I wish that we had sat down and had long conversations about, because each site that you work with, that you lead, will have a different context. So the other thing is reflect on what your partner means. I mean, we say that, but what does that really look and sound like? Becky's going to talk a little more about that. But during our first year, we had to build credibility and trust with our schools, with our partners, with the organizations we were working with. And what we did was Becky would go to an unveiling of a mini soccer pitch at one of the elementary schools. We would go to holiday celebrations with the school families. We'd go to open houses, reading events, back to school nights, parent conferences. So we worked to build that relationship at those sites in order for our staff that we were working with to also move beyond that. This was just not another thing on their plate. This grant work wasn't something else that they were being asked to participate in. All right, the third thing is personalizing a leadership style that matters for your project participants. In this case, we have adopted, and we learned this as we went through in the second, third, fourth, and fifth years of our first grant, is it's really important to have a network leadership infrastructure where you can have small teams that plan, replan, do, and then revise. And it's really important to bring challenges to the network. Somebody in that network will have an idea about a different approach to try. We leaned heavily on our advisory council. I'm not sure if all of you built an advisory council into your scope of work, but we have a small group that we lean heavily on. Every other month we meet with them and we bring our challenges, our successes, our what can we do better to that meeting, of which you will hear our evaluators, who are Huey and Louie on the end here, they are a critical piece of how our team works. The other thing is we learned is in that first year that there are hidden talents. For example, we had no idea that one of the principals we work with was an expert in expeditionary learning, of which there is research that supports advocacy for our language learners as they have project-based learning, expeditionary types of learning experiences. And so we've been really able to tap into her expertise. All right. The last one I'm just going to suggest is, it's a practical suggestion, and it's around learning the language. All right. And when I talk about the language, we all know that making very inclusive language is important to our language learners. Well, it's also very important to us who are working on grants in project director positions and or everybody else. And I mean, one of the examples I use is that when we use acronyms, which we do very freely in education, we have to make sure that the Department of Education language, our fiscal officers language, and our partners language are all understandable. So, for example, if I say PO to you, it could mean all sorts of things if my 20-year-old son was referring to it. However, PO refers to project officer, right? And in our world in higher ed, a SPO and SPO refers to our sponsored project officer. And in our fiscal folks world, that means It means a purchase order. A PO is a purchase order. Well, last time I checked, Martin, who's our PO, wasn't available for purchase. So you have to be very careful about the language so that when you start embracing new partners into your work, that you're being clear with what some of these acronyms mean. Another example would be our school districts and our schools have no idea what GAPRA means. And I'm always relying on Becky to remind me what they stand for, but helping our partners to feel comfortable with the language also in that first year. And you can build that language as you go through. So I'm going to turn it over to Melissa. She is going to respond a little bit to the first question too.
Yeah, I just want to talk from the perspective of the evaluators. We've seen working on both of these projects, how critical it is to have the evaluation team evolved from the very beginning, even before the project is funded, to have the evaluators as part of the team planning of and designing the project, developing the project measures, planning for how to collect those GIPRA measures, and thinking about the ways in which the partners that you're working with, their work can be reflected in the evaluation in the short term and in the long term. And Belinda referenced the logic model. I think it's also really important to have your evaluation team be part of developing that so that everyone is on the same page in terms of what the expectations are for what is going to happen, how it's going to happen, and what to do if things, as Belinda said, diverge from what is expected.
There's a lot of activity on the Jamboard. So there are a couple of things. One is someone said that they wish they had known that there was going to be a global pandemic that restricted access. So yes, I think that's true for everybody. And towards the end of this conversation, we'll be talking a little bit about how we had to pivot given COVID. All right, a little bit about you using the poll. Can you tell us a little bit about which collaborations you're working on to strengthen that?
Jump back into the app and find that poll. It's number 2, correct?
Yes.
And we recognize it could be more than one that you're working on right now, but pick the one that you're really focusing on.
And then feel free to show the results. Hey, Tim. Can you show the results?
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Hey, could you let us know at some point on the Jamboard how you strengthen your project officer? That'd be great. We are going to talk about that relationship shortly.
All right, next question. What are the key elements to developing effective relationships, collaboration, and communication across project partners with your own staff and with the external evaluators?
So I'm going to start to tackle this question, and I will say that we've learned a lot, and probably the most critical thing that we learned in the first grant that we've implemented in the second grant is initial face-to-face meetings. When you know the person behind the text message, the email, the request, it makes it a whole lot easier to picture that and respond in a way that that strengthens the project and moves things forward. So Belinda and I have spent a lot of intense time at the beginning of grants having face-to-face meetings with partners, with project staff, with evaluators, whoever those people are that are going to influence and affect the work of that grant. And it makes then further communications go a whole lot easier because you've built and established those relationships. The second thing is we always have a kickoff meeting, and the kickoff meeting has moved to virtual, big surprise. But that includes everybody. So we include our strategic planning team people. And if they have people they want to bring, we include our advisory committee people. And it kind of creates that momentum and that energy, and it gets people on the same page, and it gives space time for all the players. Now, they don't all necessarily remember each other, but they remember what the activity is, and they remember that we're all in this together and it's a collective effort. And I do think that strengthens the partnership piece, and it allows people to show what part where their effort is being seen. And then the last thing I will say is it's frequent communication. We have instituted, which kind of 2 and 3 questions go together, but we've instituted a collective, what we call work log. And the work log is not necessarily time on task, but it is activity driven. And so at any point in time over the course, every person does it, whether they're a partner, whether they're a staff person. Belinda and I do it as well. We can look back over that, and our evaluators use that to look at where are the peak times of activities for specific work that align with our project goals. And so that work log has been, it has morphed into something that was dreaded into something that has been really critical, and that we utilize that data as we move forward into our work. And so I will say that third thing is communication. It's really, really important to communicate, and we've established the way we communicate is if it's something that we need that person to address, their name goes in the to line of the email. And if it's something that they're just being informed about, that we want to keep them in the loop, they go in the copy line. And so we know when we look at it, man, this is something I got to pay attention to because I'm in that top line, or somebody's just making sure that I know what's going on. And that's been a critical process that has helped us stay abreast of all the many activities that are involved in our work. And it allows Belinda and I an opportunity to not have to respond to every email that comes across our screen. And so that's been a helpful piece.
I'll just add about the weekly work log that we do. It's all online. It's not time driven. As Becky said, it's just by activity. And there is another side to that, and it's the accountability side. OSU is a huge organization. And, I am asked to e-certify myself and the staff that work on the project. It's always lagging as our fiscals at my institution, and I'm sure with your institution, your organization. And so having that work log is evidence too that we are also doing the work, even if OSU is behind the pace. And I feel comfortable e-certifying that if I have a course release or my staff are doing X percentage of FTE that month, then that is true. And so I never have to think about sharing a jail cell here with Bugalugs because I am doing the right thing. I'm being as fiscally and as scope of work responsible as I can. Okay.
And you may think our teams are really big. They're not big. So don't think as a team of like 5 to 7 people. We're talking a team. Sometimes the team is 2. So when we say a team that works on it, they're not large teams. So we thought it really important for you to hear, as you have seen from video clips, from multiple partners in this project. We did not want to present this as the 4 of us getting up here and talking about our work. So we've embedded, and we appreciate our tech support back there, we've embedded video clips. So we're going to hear from Jay Mishney, who's the Director of Educational Solutions that has worked with us both on EFs for ELs. With actual schools in DC, and he is now going to be a mentor on helpers to work with our schools in Puerto Rico that you'll hear about in a little bit. But let's hear from Jay.
Mishney from Educational Solutions LLC. I currently work on 2 national professional development projects with The Ohio State University, including Educators and Families for English Learners, known as EFs for ELs, and Helping English Learners and Partners Excel with Research-Based Practices and Support, also known as helpers. Both projects have the common goal to try and advance the skills of language learners and close achievement gaps. These goals are achieved through a number of different methods, including in-service and pre-service professional development for teachers, ongoing support of teachers, administrators, and instructional staff through coaching, implementation of evidence-based strategies for supporting language learners, and engagement of families in the education process Because the project has such a wide range of partners, from Ohio State University to an independent project evaluator, project consultants, and school sites that are in multiple states. Ohio State and all the project partners have had to work to sort of create structures that help us build relationships, ensure effective communication, and collaborate to minimize the physical distance that is between all the different sites. A number of different things are in place for this process. One of the essential ones is meetings. So there are strategic planning team meetings that occur on a regular basis, advisory council meetings, and breakout group meetings that are geared to target specific project goals. Each of the meetings are really helpful because they include all the relevant partners participating in a virtual meeting. There's time to greet each other. There's always a meeting agenda that's sent out before the meeting and is referenced virtually during the meeting. There's sort of space for each partner to give a thorough update of how their site is doing and how their agenda items and project goals are going. There's also sharing of resources across sites. So on the meetings, those are generally shared via things like dropping links into the chat box or potentially emailing all the people on the invite list if it's something that can't be shared via a clickable link. And then there's always also meeting takeaways and to-do items for each project partner at the end of those meetings. It's also helpful that Ohio State's team provides recordings of each meeting. So if a project partner misses a meeting, they're able to view that meeting after the fact. And then in addition to the team meetings that Ohio State conducts, they also conduct regular individual check-ins with project partners. So we've had check-ins with Ohio State partners through any means, such as phone calls, Zoom meetings, or in-person meetings. And generally those meetings can cover anything from updates on our data tracking to efforts that we have ongoing on site at our schools, to accomplishment of our scope of work. Another useful method that helps sort of support collaboration and coordination across sites is the project evaluation team. They do a really thorough job of surveying project staff and school staff, conducting in-person or virtual interviews with project staff and school staff, and doing regular on-site visits to check and discuss project implementation. The project evaluator has also been helpful in supporting the administration of a teacher observation tool. The tool was originally Elite, and then the project team adapted that tool during the pandemic to a tool called Believe, which was adapted in order to support sort of virtual observation or observation of hybrid instruction. Finally, the project evaluator also supports collection of project data and helps put that data in a user-friendly sort of format that is easy to share with our schools to discuss progress. I guess one final form of collaboration that occurs on the project is in the form of sharing of resources. The resources that we share range from professional development modules to videos, resource lists, parent engagement supports, virtual instruction strategies, and those resources are generally shared via email during the virtual meetings I mentioned earlier, or even during in-person meetings. Thanks.
Just want to say
Hi,
those
my name is
photos that we're
Janelle.
looking at, were all from from our Puerto Rico schools. We took a visit down there just a month ago, and those were the photos from our 2 new partnering schools.
All right, question 3. Before I do question 3, I just want to say in terms of the PO role for new grantees, and I know Belinda wanted me to piggyback a little on the PO. I think the key is just communication, communication, communication. If you have, issues with something, we're here to support. We can put you in touch with people that, can help, or if we can help ourselves. So just really communicating what you need and communicating what you need to be successful with the grant, I think is a real key from a PO perspective. All right, so number 3, how do you clarify roles and responsibilities to reduce duplicated efforts and reach project goals and objectives?
So I guess I'm the lucky one that gets to address this one too. So as Belinda referred earlier, my title is Senior Project Manager. And so my role is to work on the day-to-day type of things and work with our project staff to make sure that work is moving forward. And why Belinda does have a dotted line to that piece, she does all the federal reporting, all the sub-award contracts, all the fiscal management, which that's her skill set and not mine. So it works really well to tag team. And so she always keeps me in the loop of what's going on with those, but she's the primary role person in that role. And then I do the same for the day-to-day things. So one of the important things is to make sure that staff know what the goals are, so that whatever they're working on aligns and moves that goal forward. So I do regular check-ins with our project staff, whether that be an email or whether that be a phone call or whether that be a Zoom meeting, whatever that check-in looks like, and it takes different forms depending on what it is. The other thing that we have done really well with is, and we started this a long time ago in our first grant, we have, when we have staff meetings, we have a collective agenda. And so we share it. We use Teams now, used to be in Drive, now it's in Teams. But we have each partner or each group, each team has its section of the agenda with the goal that they're working on. So it's very clear what work is being done. And then there's old business, new business, and action items. And there's a lead for that team. So that lead has to go in and update that agenda for the staff meeting. It took it off our plate, because we would spend, the day before the staff meeting, we might spend 2 hours going, what do we need to talk about? Who needs to do this? Who needs to do that? I'm like, this is cumbersome. So we made it collective, that network shared piece, where everybody's really clear and the team's listed there, and the first person, their name's underlined, and they're the person responsible to get their group together and figure out what they need to report, what we need to know as a staff. And that becomes our guiding document in between meetings. So everybody's leaves put on, their vacations, work trips, whatever it may be, that becomes our guiding document. Because when you have people, like I'm in a research grant situation where everybody's diced over multiple projects, that person might not be available when you need to talk to them. So that document's always kept up to date, and we use that as our guiding work. The next thing is, we like to say we drive process. We create processes and then we drive them. And sometimes that's rough. And especially those of you starting out, I would encourage you to establish processes, and it's going to take a little bit of effort to make people follow those processes. But when you do and it becomes habit, it is smooth sailing. We just send out update your agenda part by end of business on Monday. And when we have the meeting, everybody's done their part and we just move right into the meeting. So that was a mantra early on, drive the process, but I think it really does help if you can establish some of those. And then also when we've had to, because of the pandemic, when we've had to cancel or things like that, Belinda will just say, please go to the agenda, make sure you read it. And if there's action items, you contact the right person, and usually it's me, to make that happen. And so that's been helpful too, that things just don't get derailed because there's a glitch in the system. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, on the Jamboard, someone mentioned linking short and long-term deadline objectives with staff at the beginning, middle, and the end of each semester.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Belinda's really good about bringing the staff up to date when federal reports have been submitted, or if we've gotten evaluation feedback from our evaluation team. So the project staff is very aware of where we are in meeting those goals. And so basically that is how we've divided and conquered the roles and responsibilities. And I think it's worked really well. There have been some bumps along the way, but you're going to have that. I mean, when you start something new, but I think it goes back to the communication piece. It's really important to communicate it. And when there's a bump or an issue, have the conversation around it and come to a collective solution that you can try to implement and see if it works. Did you want to add anything to that? You're going to introduce. the
No, I'm
video.
just going to introduce the next short video clip, which is offered by Kenny Bolito. She is our site lead at University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. And I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with where Mayagüez in Puerto Rico is, but it's at the very western end. You fly into San Juan and then you take a 10-seater. That's counting the pilot, right?
It is.
We don't usually have to fly it, right? Counting the pilot, there are 10 of us on that plane and we fly over and work with our colleagues. And then we also take any opportunity that we can get. When we talk about face-to-face, we're really smart about how we can use cut back on any kinds of traveling. So for example, we're meeting with Jay Minchney tomorrow here in DC at lunchtime because this is where he and his schools are. So when Kenny comes to the mainland for a meeting, we try to sort of figure out, is it possible for us to get face-to-face to hear from her? So Tim, if you wouldn't mind playing Kenny Bolito's video clip, that'd be great.
El proyecto Helpers nos ofrece una magnífica oportunidad donde se amplía la colaboración en la búsqueda de soluciones y ganancia de conocimiento para todos los sectores involucrados. Las escuelas bilingües involucradas, específicamente Alcide Figueroa y Webs, son centros de práctica para los estudiantes del programa de preparación de maestros de la Universidad de Puerto Rico Mayagüez, donde trabajo. De este modo, el conocimiento que adquieren los maestros cooperadores y administradores con la relación y colaboración con expertos en desarrollo profesional que Ohio State University y el proyecto Helpers proveen, tiene un efecto multiplicador para los futuros maestros de nuestro programa. Yo como profesora que sirve de enlace y comunicación entre Ohio State University, las escuelas y la Universidad de Puerto Rico Mayagüez, con lo que aprendo de este proyecto puedo ser agente de cambio no solamente para este momento, sino que adquiero destrezas que puedo comunicar y compartir con mis colegas, profesores y ellos a su vez con los estudiantes futuros de nuestra universidad.
Thanks, Kenny. It did have English
Hi, my name is.
subtitles, so I'm not sure what happened to the subtitles.
But if you click on it on the agenda, I think that's in the app or on the website, the subtitles will be there. I'm not sure what happened when it got dropped into the folder that they're using, so.
So
Ready for
turn it
polling?
over to Rail.
Another polling question. How would you describe the collaboration with your evaluators right now?
So with your evaluators right now,
You do not have to show your evaluator your answer.
right?
This is anonymous.
And feel free to share the results.
And evaluators, you can also answer this.
What would your answer be?
Ready, hit that go button, Tim.
There it is.
Tim will be glad to see the back of us today.
80%.
Wow, that's
Awesome.
terrific. Yeah,
Yay.
yeah, exactly.
Evaluators are really fun people.
Okay, yeah, go, next one. Speaking of who?
All right. How do you work with your external evaluators to ensure that the evaluation plan works for program improvement? How do you collaborate on data collection, data analysis, and/or reporting?
And I'll take the lead on this and then I'll see if anybody else wants to jump in. I really, as an evaluator, I really see the role of evaluators as being most effective when it's a true partnership, when there is a give and take at all the different phases of evaluation. So whether that is in designing the project and the project evaluation or developing tools that can be, and getting feedback from your partners and from all the different collaborators so that the tool works for their needs and also is aligned with program context, to then the analysis and reporting process. I really feel like the evaluators are independent, right? They're set up to be independent from the project, but that doesn't mean that they aren't a resource, and it doesn't mean that it's not a partnership, because we can look at the research and the data and actually probably uniquely We are a collaboration of 2 evaluation agencies conducting this evaluation. So we're already a partnership within a partnership. But we can look at the research and the data and provide feedback and provide input from an independent perspective to help make the project design, the project implementation, and then ultimately the project outcomes stronger. And so one of the ways that Belinda and her team have worked really well with us is integrating us into the project management effectively and making us a visible piece of the project. So we attend all of the strategic planning meetings as evaluators. We attend all the advisory committees meetings as evaluators. Most recently for the new NPD grant, Rael traveled as part of the team that went to Puerto Rico for the initial visits so that she could meet with the partners, learn from them more about the context and hear from them what they were looking to learn from the evaluation so that we can develop tools and techniques that will be the stronger for that. And then the building of relationships helps improve the quality of the evaluation. It really, knowing the evaluator, having your partners know the evaluator means that when it comes time for surveys or other evaluation activities, that there is more response, that people feel comfortable asking for support if they run into issues. There was a question, I think, on the Jamboard about the most important evaluation you've learned, what did you do right and what would you have done differently? So one thing that we learned from the NPD grants is to set up the expectations for data, especially student level data, very early. So a lot of us have evaluation designs that look at student outcomes at the student level. And as we know, there have been a lot of challenges over the past few years in terms of being able to collect that sort of data, or in the way that schools and districts have changed how they collect that data. And so developing those relationships with the key data folks in each partnership is really, really essential for being able to weather those changes. So even though it took us a while to develop those relationships, and although I wish that we had set up certain structures a little bit earlier in the project, at this point, we have really strong relationships with the key data contacts at each of the schools and districts that we work with. And so we're able to get whatever data they have. And of course, we know that they're not able to provide everything that was originally anticipated, but we're able to get what they can give us. And so that is a piece that we have, where we have learned and grown, and where for this new project, we're setting up data structures and expectations and conversations from the very beginning.
And I would just add that one of the pieces also is making sure that those evaluation results come full circle. So we ask for that data, but then we also communicate back out to those project partners how we are using that data, as well as how the two PIs are using that data. And we do that informally through conversations with our partners, but also in meeting agendas so that they can see that those data are actually being used.
Absolutely. And when we have questions from partners about particular data results or data, just anything, we're happy to respond back to them. And so then I would just say that just as Becky was saying, communication is really key. We have open channels of communication. We meet regularly with Belinda and Becky. We're a regular part of the project meetings. We're here, of course. And then we keep open channels during the whole process each year, whether it's around the annual reports, the federal reports, or during the analysis and reporting process, so that if we run across something that needs more explanation or context, we reach out immediately to the folks who can give us that. And then conversely, if they have questions and need more immediate feedback than the reporting timeline, then we work with them to give that. And that makes sure that emergent findings and really key pieces for the project are shared in a timely manner.
And I think it's fair to say that one of the things we've really learned, and you heard Belinda talk about, the current grant that we're on, those partners are still a part of our new grant. That trust is already built with those partners, and that is a huge leverage point for new partners that you bring on. So we had one school in Columbus City that we were working with, one elementary, and now we will have a second elementary plus 2 middle schools in the new grant. And so that piece, it has gone extremely well this early on, and it's because we've already developed that trust with this principal who's very well networked with the rest of the district and the central office people. Belinda's established relationships with fiscal, and so it helps that work move even faster because we don't have to spend all the time in our planning year building those relationships in the partnership.
All right, question 5. How have you approached the fiscal and administrative side of the grant, ensuring that everyone knows what to do and how and when to do it?
So this is fiscal oversight is one of my chief responsibilities. And I have had to find a balance that worked for me, and you as project directors are going to do likewise. And so at minimum, you should understand the ED budget model. You should develop a strong relationship with a fiscal mentor at your institution, and you should be able to interpret the fiscal reporting. That's at minimum. For me, I was able to stretch those skills even with a new university-wide fiscal system called Workday, that if anybody would like to have it and keep it, that would be great. I've had to really push my skills to understand that. And the reason why I am very hands-on when it comes to the fiscal is because the scope of work determines your fiscal, and your fiscal responds to the scope of work. So you have to be really clear about what monies are in each budget line. If you want to change and modify activities, you need to talk to your PO, especially if you know with Edgar's rules that it's more than 10% from one budget line to another. So I have found that the way to keep some sort of really handle on the continuous fiscal expenditure, so that we're not up and down like a yo-yo with expenditure, that we're drawing down as we should be to align with our scope of work, is that I've really had to understand our university's lag time for reporting and be able to keep my own spreadsheet. And I am not that technologically savvy when it comes to spreadsheet. I have enough skills to get myself into trouble with a spreadsheet, but I always get support to make sure that I am tracking the expenditure, and I align that spreadsheet to now the KMS reporting. So if it's a 2-month reporting from September 1 through to the end of October, I have a column in my spreadsheet that shows all the expenditures aligned with the ED 524. And you know what I'm talking about, those budget lines, right? Because we all know that in your own institutions and your own school systems that you work with, they have internal budget management that looks very different to the way the Department of Ed outlines that 525, those budget categories. So to keep my sanity, or at least some of it, I always follow my spreadsheet to align with the Department of Ed, with OLs. The other thing that's become incredibly important is the relationship with the fiscal folks at your partnering sites, whether it's a school district, a school, an organization, whoever is your subaward or on your contracts. Get to know those fiscal people. I'm not kidding you. Go down and have a cup of coffee with them. They'll be happy to see you because nobody else usually goes to them in any type of grant, right? Go to them, sit with them, get to know them, offer your first name, develop a relationship, because they are learning along the way, just like we were. When I was at Newport News Public Schools, I learned grant management by literally sliding myself along the seat of my pants. And it is such a rewarding process to work with fiscal folks at your sites. So do that. You can really help each other to do that. The other piece of this is you've got to trust your ethical self, and you've got to be courageous. And I'll just give one example. Our OSU travel system told us that a return flight to Mayaguez was $1,000. I had been on the United website and I saw that we could get flights for around about $525. My university was telling me that I had to use their subcontracted travel organization in order to do it. And I said, I am not paying $1,000 for each of us to go to Puerto Rico and back. I'm paying what I can see. So we got together as a team and we said, we are going to be fiscally responsible, even if it means, which we did, Becky and I, as employees, got a smack on the back of the hand when we didn't use the travel system at OSU, but we did get our money back. So we now have one ding, and we're a baseball family, so we know we have strike three. When we get to strike three, we're gonna have to find out who at the university can help us not get a warning letter about not using their system if it's gonna cost $1,000. So be courageous. It's okay to be fiscally responsible, which is what we are charged with doing, right? And then the only other piece that I really need to mention is that you need to know Edgar, but you don't need to have swallowed the file, all right? So find somebody, usually your sponsored project officer will be able to help you. And of course, your PO here, Martin and Jessica Swan is our PO for our helpers grant. They can help you with understand something around Edgar that you might have a question about if your sponsored project officer can't help you. All right, I'm going to just ask Tim, are you ready, please, for Principal Teresa Areba's second clip, because she has some very sound advice about how she manages the dollars that she
Over the life cycle
in her pot at her school in order to make those dollars go as far as she possibly can.
It is important to ensure that the school improvement goals were aligned and focused. The fiscal side of managing the NPD grant, SQUIG, the School Quality Improvement Grant, Title I, and District General Funds required decisions to manage the funds in a manner that all initiatives were woven together with one outcome to ensure staff's professional learning outcomes meeting the EL and non-EL growth. Utilizing the different pots of money involved, orchestrating the different scopes of work efficiently and effectively. It was paramount that each funding source supported and did not supplant one or another. Key question always focused on whether this action or decision will support the work and outcome of our school improvement goals.
Wonderful. What sound? What sound?
Question 6. How has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the way that you do your work? How have you supported collaboration with families during the pandemic?
So I'm going to start with this one, and I will tell you that, believe it or not, it really didn't impact our work because we were already doing the strategic planning meetings online because our partners, remember, are all over. We had implemented processes that we were driving that didn't disrupt how we do our staff meetings, and we just did them online versus physically in a building. But developing the agendas, all those processes continued on. So we probably had the least disruption of project management from that perspective, but where the big gap came was in supporting our families. We had planned specific activities, in-person activities for families that obviously got nixed right when COVID hit. And so we scrambled to figure out what would be the best way to support our families in those schools during COVID. And it was a struggle because we had access issues. Columbus City was not a one-to-one technology school district. It is now, but it wasn't then. A lot of the families did not have internet access. They were sharing one device with 7 or 8 children in a home. And so we worked really hard. And so one of the things we did is we really utilized WhatsApp because they were using that to communicate amongst themselves. And so we took them where they were and we figured out on our end how we can utilize that app to better support them. So we developed parent meetings, and they chose the date and time, and we made sure the principal would be online with them. And we asked where they needed support, what they needed support with. And Columbus City has a really unique family ambassadors program where they have family ambassadors based at the school, and they were our translators. So we were able to translate whatever we were saying in their language and so they could hear. And it became a very motivating, energized, and it gained a lot of momentum to the point the principal has now basically wanted them that they are her parent leaders, and they have become integral in the community for disseminating information and making that school to parent or home linkage really critical. We got so much momentum with that one during COVID that we started this year a Latino one, because she's got a lot of Latino families as well. And so the parents are now asking us, when are we going to start our learning English classes that we had planned a year and a half ago that got, derailed because of COVID. So we have some things to go back and pick up that there's some excitement for.
Wonderful.
And that's been really, really helpful. It was a struggle to get them on Zoom. It was a struggle to learn how to mute your microphone so that you didn't have all the noise in the background, things that we all experienced. But you know what? They were resilient and they figured it out. And it was through that collaboration that I think we developed a new sense of community and collectiveness. And I told Belinda, I'm probably going to tear up. I was at the school a week ago, and it's like one of the first times I've been back at the school face to face, even though our instructional coaches have been there. And the parent family ambassador person, who is Somali, and she had a child, so she was off on maternity leave. So I'd only seen her through Zoom, saw me across the gym, waved, came running over to give me a hug. And I thought that would have not happened 2 years ago. So I think there's a lot of blessing that came out of COVID, even though it was a struggle. And there's that was in front of all the children and other parents that were there. And I thought, that was just a shining example of what working together through all of those issues, what we've received from that. I want to share a clip from one of our parent meetings. This happens to be our Latino meeting, and we are showing the parents how PALS works in the school. And so we made little video clips that we could send through them through WhatsApp. It's also posted, that I'll show you in a minute, in their virtual community room. So let's take a look at this, a clip from the Econ parent meeting.
Wonderful. What sound? What sound? What sound? What sound? Be careful. What sound? Great job. What sound?
Okay.
Así que nosotros también usamos esto con los tercer, cuarto y quinto grado para los niños que no saben sus sonidos de letras. Así que hay dos partes de la programa. So I was explaining to her that third, fourth, and fifth graders that don't know their letters and sounds are also getting this.
Thank you. Good. All right. And then the next clip is of the children in kindergarten. So kindergarten and first grade practicing the letter sounds in pairs.
Ahora esto es con los niños practicando lo que aprendieron.
Yes, so I resonate with what Rob just.
And before Becky shows you the community room, I just wanted to answer this question really briefly. You may have heard Jay Mitchney talk about how the evaluation team developed an observation tool that was appropriate for the virtual environment. And that was one of the ways that we collaborated. We looked at the research, we developed a tool, we sought input from the partners, from the instructional coaches at each of the sites, to develop a tool that worked in the virtual and the hybrid environments that all of the in-service schools were in the previous year.
So now we have two tools we can use, depending on whether we're face-to-face or we're hybrid. I just want to quickly share with you, this is a virtual community room. We had an actual community room that we were utilizing with parents. That was a physical space in the building that obviously, when schools shut down, we thought, how are we going to disseminate these resources? So through expertise through another organization that works with them, we developed this, and each of our schools will have these going forward into helpers. And so they post resources upcoming school events, we highlight families, just a host of things and a host of resources that can be all shared in one spot where parents can access.
I just want to add that the organization that developed this community room with us is called Get Creative. And they are not on the ED budget, but they had a contract to do work with our sites. And so we were able to leverage their expertise, so work with them to be able to support our families during COVID. So that was a great way to be able to make sure that, first of all, we were within budget with our Department of Ed funds, but also to leverage their funds to support our scope of work together. We've got Rael's going to do. Yep.
We're gonna
It's
skip
got
the
a
last.
poll. I think it's the last poll.
We're gonna skip it
Oh,
because we're running out of time.
okay. All right. So there's just a couple of takeaways that I just big picture type of suggestions. So, and you can all read. So the first one is, solicit feedback from your partners. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Somebody will assist. You don't necessarily can't correct a mistake. That's okay, but keep moving the work forward informed by the changes that you make in response. The second thing is always attend to relationships and just be authentic. The third, keep the focus on those outcome measures. Remember, back of the toilet door, right? It's where all the spelling words used to go. And I have a 7-year-old grandson and he still gets tested on spelling words on Friday. And so his mom now is putting them on the back of the toilet door. So remember to get that logic model up in front. Just make your partnership visible. Talk to anybody and everybody who will, care to listen just for a minute. Have that little elevator speech, whether it's your department chair, whether it's your ed admin colleagues, whether it's, a happening with a associate superintendent or any other organization. Just be prepared to have that quick conversation. Humanize our work. I mean, I think we all work to the best of our ability to do that, but that's become extremely important, especially since living through, the messy world, messy emotional world of all of our projects, and then complicated by the pandemic. So also, very importantly, remember to check our own biases. We have trainings that we do around implicit biasness, making sure we are having all voices included. And so I think that's a reminder that we need to make sure that we know ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. And then the last one is follow your experience and your own values. If you've got a problem, go back inside yourself, do your implicit thinking, your reflection, and take that then to your team. And together you'll be able to hash it out to find at least a way that you can move a problem forward, get to the core of that problem. And that will also help you sleep well at night. The last video clip that we have, we really wanted to finish the session by hearing from one of the HCDE interns and her experience. We want to raise Ijoma Manasso's raise her voice so that you can hear it just one more time. So Tim, if you wouldn't mind taking it away, and we'll hear from Ijoma.
I resonate with what Rob just said, because I started as a sub, and then when COVID hit, I was a highly qualified teacher. So because of the charter schools, they allow us to still, work in and teach kids, even though you're not certified completely. So as it hit, we had to move to the virtual learning, and it was stressful. The amount of new technology we had to learn was just enormous. I consider myself a little tech savvy. I pitied the rest of my colleagues who gave up. I literally had to help everybody. And at that time, I wasn't an assistant principal. I was in charge of other things, the IET part and, the 504 and the SPED part. And I was called. Every class I had to help to do one thing or the other. Oh, I can't see my work. I need you to please help me so that I can project it so that the kids could say, I'll leave my class. And, and after the class, the teachers lamented terribly. We had no advance notice, no preparation. They just said, this is what you need to do. You have to learn it quickly, and fast. I saw myself wearing many hats. As I became the assistant principal, I was also teaching. And what I decided to do was, the first thing I had to talk to the kids, ask them how they're doing. They tell their stories. Some of them are crying. Some of them are like, Miss, I have to attend to my little brother or little sister, so I'm going to go away for 5-10 minutes. And I just had to accommodate all those things. Sometimes I will ask a question. The kid is very ready to respond, but the noise in the background was like, I will tell the kid, okay, don't worry, I understand, and we have to move on. I lost my dad in this whole process, and I had no time to grieve. I can remember telling Jeanette and that I couldn't come for a class or two because I had to process, my feelings and my emotions. And some days I spent crying, but I had to keep that aside and teach the kids because the kids also needed me to support them. Some of them also lost their parents and they just stopped coming to school. You have to keep calling. Parents would say, you know what, the kid would be there tomorrow. There is an internet connection problem. There were so many things. And then some parents will keep changing their numbers. Some of them had to keep collecting all these little portable network internet devices so that the kids can also connect while they're at home. They had to come and take computers, especially those who didn't have. And if they didn't come, we just have to improvise somehow, It was a lot. It was very stressful. And it's still stressful because even as an administrator, I still have to continue to wear the hats. This year, I saw myself talking to kids consistently about behavior. Even today, I was at it. It never ends. And you have to find a way to speak to their emotions, and talk to them about how to self-regulate themselves, to be able to sit in the class and learn. Some of them are hungry. What they want is, I need something to eat and then I can listen to you.
Okay. If you have any other questions, please feel free to put those up on the Jamboard and contact us, and I'll be happy to respond further as well. So thanks to you all.
Thank you so much to the panel. We're just a little bit behind schedule, and so it is 2:20 now. We will come back at 2:35 and start our next session.